Hello, everyone. Welcome to Experience League Live. Before we get started today, and for those of you joining us for the first time, let me introduce Experience League before I introduce my guests. Experience League is your one-stop shop for getting the most out of your Adobe Experience Cloud solutions. Whether you're looking for product documentation, tutorials, courses, or best practices from your peers, you'll find it all at experienceleague.adobe.com. And yes, of course, this session will be recorded and available there shortly after we wrap up. And now a bit of housekeeping. You can communicate with us via the chat. We'll try to address all your questions during the show. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to join us for our Ask Me Anything session on August 6th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll have experts from Adobe on a live chat in the community forum. Keep an eye open for the announcements in the Experience League community forum, and the link will be posted on the show's landing page as well. But now for today's topic. So today we'll be exploring how Adobe Journey Optimizer integrates with AEM content fragments and dynamic media to power real-time scalable personalization across the channels. You'll see how this integration helps streamline content delivery, eliminate duplication, enable hyper-personalized visuals without disrupting your existing workflow. Whether you're in a small team or a large enterprise, you're in the right place today. This session will show you how to move faster, stay consistent, and personalize at scale. But now, without further ado, let me welcome our fantastic guests. My first guest today is Jyothitha Chandran. She's product manager, and she's the product manager who developed this feature. Welcome, Jyothitha.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Great to have you here on the show. My
Same here.
second guest today is Chris Ivory, and Chris has been on shows with me before. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Linda.
So Chris is Senior Principal Solution Consultant with Adobe Customer Solutions, and he'll be showing a lot in the product today. Unfortunately, Kaitlin White won't be able to join us today. Kaitlin is our product marketing manager for this feature set. She's not feeling well today. I hope Kaitlin was able to at least join us on YouTube. So Kaitlin, if you're listening, we hope you feel better soon. And we're missing you. Okay, so now let's get started. And because we're Experience League Live, of course, I want to introduce you a bit more to our customers and to our watchers or to our viewers. So, Jyothitha, let me start with you. You told me that you're a trained Indian classical dancer. That's amazing. At what age did you start?
I remember it to be 4 years old.
Wow.
And you're still dancing?
I do. I still do. I still dance. I am not. I've taken a small break from my training sessions, but I still dance.
Wow. So when you were still doing your training sessions, how often did you train a week? Was it daily or
It's not daily. 3 to 4 classes a week.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I have a question. What's one lesson from classical dance that you've carried into your professional life?
Oh, I would say there are many because right from the moment I can think of, I think all my principal values in life are built from dance or training. I think something which I would want to call out is a never give up attitude, because even in dance, right, the way how you articulate a dance form, you practice for it, and then you perform on stage, it's not something that happens over a day. It takes a lot of days effort. It takes you to keep practicing it so that it comes automatically, it flows within you through your emotions, through your body language. So it requires a lot of practice, and there are a lot of downs that you'll have to face through, come back at it again the next day with the same spirit. I think that is what I carry with me, not just in professional life but otherwise in my personal life too. I really hated to give something up if I don't excel at it or if I don't do well at it. So I think that is something which I keep very close to my heart, and Yeah, it's a great training lesson for me through my life.
That's fantastic. I think everybody can learn from that for sure. And Jyothitha, at Adobe, what are you focused on? I mean, you developed this feature. What's your bigger focus as a product manager?
Yeah. So I work with AGO's product management team, and I mainly focus on the content charter. So within the content charter, all the integrations. So with this year, we had the AEM integrations come into place. All that is what I mainly focus on, with the integrations with AEM, with Workfront, all of that coming into place. But this is something which I'm really excited about, that we have made a step towards, and something which we are working towards to bring more exciting features as well over the years.
Fantastic. Looking forward to the future developments you'll be working on.
Absolutely.
Chris, let me introduce you. Chris, you told me that you take hosting and cooking very seriously. And you
Yes.
said that last Christmas that actually, I would almost say, brought your work, probably your work attitude and your private life together. Tell me about that.
Yeah, you were just asking Jyothitha how like dance impacted work. And I would argue it's almost the inverse to me. I actually last Christmas built out a whole Gantt chart for the holiday dinner because I was just so nervous about getting any of the timing wrong. So it started literally 72 hours before dinner, and I mapped out every single thing that I had to do along the way just to make sure everything was perfect.
And was it?
It was
Was
good.
it? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, my I was almost as proud of the chart as I was the meal, but yeah, it turned out great.
So what is your secret weapon? Did you use an app or did you use a spreadsheet or any other gadget for your Gantt chart?
I did. I used the full database to map it out, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Oh
So
my goodness. I might contact you for the Thanksgiving dinner this year.
happy to
So,
help. I normally like to buy like a whole separate meal and test out internally, like with my
yeah,
wife first. But with the prime rib,
nice.
my wife wouldn't let me buy a whole prime rib just for the two of us, so I had to take
Okay.
extreme measures. Yeah.
And I mean, what triggered you? Have you had a holiday disaster that no amount of planning could prevent, or was there anything?
No, but I will say we had friends over, and the bar is exceptionally high among my friends. There's a lot of really exceptional chefs in the group. So when you host, you got to bring your A game. So
Oh wow, yeah, the bar is really
yep,
high.
yep.
Joshua, I just saw your comment. Yes, the session will be available on demand. So it'll be made available within about 24 hours after streaming. So if you do have to drop or come back or want to share with your colleagues, feel free. You will be able to find the session. It is being recorded. Okay, let's move to our main topic. Chris, I know one second before I move to our topic, at Adobe, you are one of our amazing customer solutions consultants. Tell our viewers just a bit about what you do day to day when you're not presenting on Experience League live events.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a solution consultant, my job is primarily working with customers to help align the Adobe product suite with your requirements, right? So if you're today working with the Journey Optimizer and want to talk more about the AEM integration or vice versa, odds are good you're going to see me pop up in your discussions with Adobe to kind of tailor the use cases around your requirements and make sure that you're seeing the most value out of your solutions.
Perfect. That brings me to our solution. And speaking of value, Yothitha, what is the value that this integration between AJO and AEM, this specific integration? I mean, we've already been integrated from day one with AEM assets or asset essentials, but what additional value does this specific integration bring to our customers?
Sure. So I would place it in this way, right? In today's omni-channel world, where all the customers, all brands want to bring very omni-channel experience to its customers, right? And that requires a unified strategy. So when we call a unified strategy, it should be something that communicates across platforms, helps the life of a marketer, the life of a content creator, the life of different collaborators coming towards for bringing this campaign together in a more seamless manner. In that same way, when we look at this particular integration, especially with AEM, which is like an upstream application where content teams create their design, curate their content, get that approved, and they have the ready to use assets. And thinking about AGO, which is like a marketing platform where marketers come in with their orchestration strategies, their campaign strategies, build that content, and try to reach out to the end customers using some assets which are approved as well, right? That is where this integration becomes powerful, because this is bridging that gap to bring a unified strategy for brands to come together, where I would say there are key four value unlocks that we see with this integration coming on board. The first one being content reusability, right? Because with this particular integration, now content can be created in a very modular format in Adobe Experience Manager, which can be accessed using AGO as an upstream application as well, right? Then, if we look at the viewpoint of bringing brand consistency, now AEM can act as a dam, as a central place where all the assets can sit, and all of the assets that is being used across channels, across experiences can be the same, such that that consistency is maintained across for a particular brand. The third one is how to bring personalization at scale, because when we have these content now being pulled in from Adobe Experience Manager, we do allow mapping of personalization that can happen at AGO's workflow itself, where this can be done at a one level as well for hyper personalization use cases as well. And lastly, the main intention, that is a faster time to value or time to market for customers, because having all these experiences stitched together in a more seamless manner and removing the siloed experiences, which is probably in a traditional marketing experience, is something which will allow brands to move at a faster and accelerated pace. So I think
So
that is the uh, complete value unlock when we look at the Azure AM integration, that it is allowing marketers, empowering marketers, in fact, for a more seamless integration across these two products to bring together the campaign workflow at a faster and accelerated time to pace.
yeah, so basically the handoff as well between the creative teams and the marketing teams, right?
Yes.
What?
So go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on the handoff as well, because one key thing that we have observed with our customers as well is the approval workflow, or ensuring the brand consistency when they use assets or any kind of constructs in their content, right? So even with this workflow, we have adhered to very strict adherence on governance and control between these assets, because if you look at AM itself, we have the assets which are created, which are designed, there is an approval process that happens, and then the publication workflow is initiated. These assets which are already in a published status is what we are allowing marketers to access within AGO and use. Say for example, even with both of our integrations with AM content fragments, that is the integration that we have with AM sites, and the integration with dynamic media, we are adhering to these controls, or these uh, things in place, which is going to allow that brand consistency and governance to be in place as well.
Fantastic. That was the question I wanted to ask you. Top Pretender is asking if the integration is GA for AJO customers. Yes, it is, and I think this is a good point where we'll ask Chris to jump into the product. Unless Chris, you want to add anything to what Jyothitha said, since you're the one working with the customers on looking at how they can use this product best.
No, I think that was perfect, and I think we'll obviously go through more as we're going through the presentation. Um, but to the point made, yeah, let's show you what's live today. So I'm going to jump right over into the application here. And it's important to note that the integration between Journey Optimizer and Experience Manager is multifaceted, right? Content exists in more than just one state within Experience Manager. You have assets, you have content fragments, you have sites, experience fragments, and so forth. So the first thing I want to call out today, and we mentioned up front, right? Sandra mentioned it right in the intro, but the integration between Experience Manager and Journey Optimizer was actually implemented day one of Journey Optimizer, right? The moment of Journey Optimizer going GA, we had integration with Experience Manager. We're looking on the screen right now at my Experience Manager Assets instance, but as you'll see, as I transition over into Journey Optimizer, it's almost the exact same experience. I'm going to jump between them again right here. And that's because Journey Optimizer, since it is in charge of not only the orchestration, but also the authoring and delivery for a lot of digital channels, when we set this up and built that authoring engine, we built it so that the assets it natively sits on top of is an AEM repository. So for AJO standalone customers, Journey Optimizer standalone customers, you get a lightweight version of AEM assets as part of that purchase. We call it Asset Essentials. But for customers that have an existing investment in AEM assets, we can actually point to your existing repository of approved assets and use that as the foundation right from day one within Journey Optimizer. So back to Sandra's point before about reusing your existing content and Jyothitha's point about seeing the most value out of that content, immediately you can take the content that you might have been using, say, site side before, and have the same approved assets usable for email, push, MMS, and more.
And you have the same UI as well, which is great.
Same exact, yeah, I can toggle right between them. And not only does it look the same, you get the same benefit when you click down into some of these assets, right? If I were to come down here and just open up any one of these assets, first of all, you're seeing everything like content credentials to see the creation path for a lot of these assets already available. I could click in and get access to all of the smart tagging that you see the benefit from within AEM assets as well. It's fully integrated. We're actually in Journey Optimizer right here, and I could actually expand out my left-hand rail to look at all of the other elements within Journey Optimizer. But under that Assets tab, it's all immediately available for me to use.
We have another question before we move on from Top
Mm.
Pretender. He's asking, what is the typical use case in AJO for using the content fragment from AEM?
That's a great question. We're going to walk through that in just a minute because there's several use cases it unlocks. So we'll touch upon that in just a minute. Before we move to that, though, because that is the focus of today's session, just closing out on the assets for anybody less familiar, you have access to those assets throughout the entire authoring process, right? So not only do I have access to it right here, and again, this has been in since day one, so I don't want to belabor this point, but we have access to those assets across all of our authoring channels natively as well. So I could either drag and drop them from my left-hand side. I could browse and pick them from the asset selector here. We have a lot of different ways we can tie into those existing repositories in AEM and use them right within AJO. Now, I'm going to stick with email as a channel today just because it's the most visual, it's the most fun to play with, but all the concepts we're going to talk to apply to all of our native digital channels. So email, push, MMS, in-app, and so forth, all have a similar integration pattern with Experience Manager. Now, the point Pretender made just a minute ago about like, what does this look like from a content fragment integration perspective, that hones into some of our newer implementations and integration patterns between AEM and Journey Optimizer. So I'm going to jump over now into one such content fragment in AEM. So for anybody in the session here today that might not be as familiar with content fragments within AEM, you can essentially think of content fragments as a structure of individual elements that make up a holistic piece of content, right? Content isn't necessarily just an image. It could be short copy, long copy, title, call to action link, hero image, sidebar banner. All of these different assets might be a part of a bundled set of content that you want to approve for, say, an article or a product. You want to make sure you keep all of that structure in place and then use the appropriate attributes or individual elements of that structure for push, email, site side, and so on. So in my case today, I've got an article here. So I can see I've got title, I've got the slug. I'm even using fragments within fragments to have my author element within here. And of course, I have the copy down below. The process is that you would obviously approve and publish this out from Experience Manager. And in the tagging, make it such that we tag this as available for use within Journey Optimizer. And what that does is it allows us to use that back within the authoring experience within Journey Optimizer.
Chris, where do you tag it to be available for use in Journey Optimizer?
I'm sorry, I missed one word there, Sandra.
I asked, where do you tag it to be available for use in Journey Optimizer?
Yeah, great question. So on the right-hand side here, down here, you have the ability to tag, right? And it basically, alongside all of your standard tags that you would have, we have an AJO enabled section. All this is doing here is it's specifying for those uninitiated, you can have multiple environments for Journey Optimizer and multiple sandboxes within those environments. So I have here specifying which sandboxes that I allow this content fragment to be used within.
Perfect. So that way you can limit access or specifically allow access to the AJO users for specific environments.
Exactly. So if you've got teams with different mandates or different brands within the same IMS org, you can control where these assets are made available.
Perfect.
So jumping back into Journey Optimizer here, this is just my standard email template. I'm going to use a couple today. You saw me with the coffee one a minute ago. We're going to jump back to that. But for right now, I'm going to look at my Luma Fitness brand. And the use case here is I want to take that article and use it within this email to promote kind of an adventure use case, right? Buy the equipment you need for your upcoming adventure. So I'm going to go ahead and do this from scratch. Now, given the time today, I like to take kind of a cooking show approach with some of this. So I'm going to show you how to bake the cake. And then I've got some examples pre-baked in the oven as well. So I'm going to drop
But
in.
you're not using a Gantt chart today.
No Gantt charts today. I promise no Gantt charts, right? So for those of you less familiar with Journey Optimizer, right, on the left-hand nav here, we have a very intuitive drag and drop interface to build out and structure emails. That could be a whole conversation unto itself, but for today, I'm just dropping in a text block because anytime you drop in content within Journey Optimizer, you have multiple degrees of personalization, everything from using attributes off the profile to dynamic if-then-else type logic to full decisioning capabilities. So for today, I'm going to use that personalization block where I can, in an alternate use case, maybe use data off of the profile here. But what I actually want to do is reference that content fragment that we were just looking at. So on my left-hand rail here, I can go down to AEM content fragments and open up my content fragment selector. Now, the reason we're taking this approach is we're actually going to set up a reference point within this template. What's really interesting about this integration is that you can set up a reference point to a specific article or fragment within Experience Manager. And if changes are made to that fragment up through until the send time of the communication, it's going to pull in the latest changes. So we're actually making a reference to the appropriate fragment. Now, because I have so many different instances here, I'm going to jump over to my repository. One of our previous EXL Live sessions, we talked about Gen Studio integration. That's the other repository you saw there. But in this case, I'm going to pull right from my Experience Manager instance. So I'm going to go ahead and grab in my article here. And it's dropping that in right as you can see right here. For those of you that have been using Journey Optimizer for a while, if you don't see this view, just worth noting, we did add a pills feature recently to make it easier to just conceptualize the different structure elements within your personalization. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. But you'll also see that it added that content fragment as something that is accessible now within the authoring space. Now, before I go any further, if I jump back to that fragment, I do want to call out a few different areas, right? First of all, this fragment has multiple attributes that I can call, right? The title, author information, main copy, image. We have all of this available. The other thing I want to call out is I have a bracketed placeholder right up here for name. So when I'm going through this experience here, first and foremost, now that I've got access to this fragment, I can go dive deep into all of the individual attributes and assets and pull in anything I need right here. I don't have to code, right? It's still giving me a view in case I want to do additional modifications, but I'm just dropping it in and it's good to go at this point. But if you'll recall, we also had that name attribute, which allows me to personalize off the individual over here in Journey Optimizer. So what I could do right here is I could just name it like, hey, camper, if I wanted to keep it pretty generic, right? And do something like that. Or I could actually go ahead and use any of the personalization attributes off of the real-time profile with an Experience platform. So for example, here, I'll go find first name. I'm just going to drop that in here and it populates that right away. Now I could add additional attributes, right? I could come in here and add additional ones right here. We'll do that in a minute, but for right now, that's all I really needed to do if I wanted to use the contextual title of the content fragment within Journey Optimizer.
Let's take a very short break. We have a question from Dinesh. Dinesh is asking if this feature, the exporting CFs to AJO, is only available for AEM, AACS. I think it's
I can take that, Sandra. I think Dinesh is asking if this integration, what we have, is only available for AM cloud service customers
cloud
or for
service.
on-prem and managed services too. So, Dinesh, this integration, what we have, the AM content fragments and dynamic media, is only for AM cloud service customers. But for AM managed services customer, we have a roadmap which we are looking into, which I can provide more details after the demo to talk about what we are working on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay,
Now, the
Chris, I
last thing,
think we can go on.
yeah, the last thing I'll call out right here is, like I said, you don't have to remember this structure here, right? It's intelligently referenced here, and we can see all the different elements. But if I ever just want to hop back and actually just look at that, I can go ahead and literally either view this fragment right within Journey Optimizer for a simplified view, or I can open an AEM, and that'll bring me right back to this screen right here so I can view the full structure. So this is a pretty tight integration between these two systems. Now,
Also, one thing which I want to add on top of what Chris was saying is that, so if you look at the integration way how the different fields were inserted, both of these integration, what we have done is by virtue of reference, which means that there are no copies that are being made on the AGO side. We are directly referencing any AEM construct like an AEM content fragment or a dynamic media asset to be used within AGO. One key value unlock with that is that any real-time updates that is being made to that AM content fragment or a dynamic media asset will be directly percolated in all of the AGO deliveries. So that is something which I wanted to call out just to say, because the whole integration framework how we have built for this is also keeping in mind that we want to allow real-time updates for brands to communicate it in a more seamless manner too.
yep, exactly. And that reference point is a value add, right? So that's why we're not seeing the content literally populate within this authoring view. It's because when it comes time to send, it's going to take the latest approved content to push through this communication. That said, if we ever do want to simulate this and see what the content would look like at this moment in time, we can absolutely do so. So throughout Journey Optimizer, we have the ability to simulate off of any of our test profiles here. So it's going to pull that content in real time, and I can see it's getting the hero image, it's getting the title where it is using that personalization parameter we passed, as well as the copy as well.
Nice.
Now, the other thing I'd like to call out here is you don't have to put it all in one block like I did right here, right? You can set it up a little bit more like this, where you can have it be dynamic and work throughout the template that you're authoring within Journey Optimizer. This will look very similar to the example we just walked through, right? If I just simulate this again, just for a moment here. Right, it's going to look almost identical right here. But the thing I want to call out right here is we currently have a ski adventure excursion talked about. The other thing I love about this integration is if I were to go back into that authoring experience where we accessed the fragment, the other thing this enables is I can very easily swap in a fragment. So if you have, in my case right here, an article template, and I want to just be able to take the right approved content and not have to rebuild this each time, I can just swap the fragment out. And in doing so, it'll bring me back to the available elements. And instead of ski touring, maybe I want to talk about longboarding, right? So let's go ahead and grab the longboarding example. I select it. I don't have to do anything else. All the other reference points are dynamically referred to. So now if I simulate again, we'll see the other approved articles show up here. So if you think about the use cases for this, because I know there's a question up front about like the use cases, I'm using a very simple article example here where I can reuse the approved kind of format and take the approved copy for each new article. The use cases are wild and varied here, right? This could be for approved product examples. This could be for multilingual content. So in Journey Optimize, we have the ability to set up multilingual templates so that fragment could have the approved English version, Spanish version, so on and so forth. right? There's a lot of different use cases, and that's the value of this integration is content fragments can represent so many different pieces of content, and now you can dynamically reference them so that it assembles in real time at time of send within Journey Optimizer.
Perfect.
Let me pause there for a minute to see if there's any other questions before we walk through another great part of this integration, which is the integration within dynamic media.
For now. So please, if you have any questions, don't be shy. Put them in the chat. There we go. So the first question that we now have is, does this work with custom HTML email template?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm using the standard editor within Journey Optimizer today. For those that might be less familiar, we also have the ability to switch to a code editor, right, essentially, or import your own HTML. So they are working with less of a structured drag and drop, but you still have full control over the HTML content. The nuanced feature here is the fact that regardless of whether or not you're working in the drag and drop interface or the HTML editor, this personalization editor stays the same. So you'll have the same degree of personalization options available. So this AEM content fragment integration will remain the same regardless.
Okay, we have a question from DD75. The question is, can I use AEM omnichannel content fragments in inbound channels like web cards, code-based experiences, etc. as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't restricted to outbound channels. Again, because we integrated at the personalization editor level, it means that most of the out of the box channels, be it inbound or outbound, so web and content card and others, will have access to these same fragments.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So the other significant enhancement that we've had recently in this integration is through dynamic media. So for those less familiar with AEM's dynamic media offerings, this is a suite of capabilities within Experience Manager that allows for dynamic content rendering, essentially. There's a couple different elements to this. The first that I want to call out here is smart cropping, or as among a couple other different filters and options available. Basically, you can drop into a whole folder of content in Experience Manager some set of smart features that might occur. This could be color variation, this could be filtering, but my favorite of them is the ability to smart crop. Because we've all been there, right? You've got a great image asset, but you're now working in a square space or a vertical banner, and it was originally put in a 16:9 aspect ratio, whatever the case might be. And now you have to manually, you can't just crop in the center, right? Because that might not give you what you're looking for. You need it to crop in the right way to keep the main content of that image. So with smart cropping, it applies to a whole folder at a time, intelligence to where it needs to crop. So if this is my normal image right here, I can see I set up one for a 16:9 banner, and you can see it's showing me where it's removing. So it's just focusing in. And obviously the focus area here is on the coffee cup. But as I jump around, it's always keeping in focus the main subject of that image. So that's one part of dynamic media. Another part I want to call out is we also have the ability to do dynamically rendered image assets, passing parameters into that request for the asset. So in my case right here, you can see I've built this in kind of a layered view here. So I've got two text objects, a background, the main canvas where I define the size. For any one of these, if I go into that specific object, I have details about the font being used, the width, height, and so forth, but also parameters where I can toggle on what might be values passed when I'm calling for this specific asset. So for example, in my case right here, I'm primarily focusing on text values, right? So I can come in here right within AEM and say like, hey, Chris, right? It's BOGO Thursday, right? Or whatever the case might be. Now I'm just simulating right here, but if I were to copy the URL, this is parameters that I can pass through, and it will render this as a finalized image when we're making that call. Both of these sets of dynamic media, the ability to apply things like smart cropping, filter, image orientation, and so forth, as well as these elements of dynamic media, are also available within Journey Optimizer. So it's the same flow as before, right? I have assets available and I can select them. Now, however, when I've got my asset in here, in addition to just the normal information I'd have about the image asset within Journey Optimizer, it's identifying those parameters that I need to then personalize the text that's rendered into this image. And you can see here that I have full access to that personalization editor just like before. So if I want to use fields off of the profile, contextual information, decision elements, it's all available here for me to use. And then down below, I'm using that smart cropping feature to say, use this image asset. And I'm seeing two different variants here because what I'm going to have happen here is one is going to render on on web, and the other, on desktop. The other is going to render on mobile. But I've gone ahead and said, use the same image, just apply the different dynamic media features to figure out which aspect ratio to use. You can even see I'm doing so much as flipping here.
Yeah, just wanted to point that out. That's amazing.
Yeah, so if we wanted to simulate this just like before, I can go right in here. And just like with the content fragments, the reason for simulation here is that way I can apply all of the final elements, right? Like things like data off of the profile. So I can see Montserrat's name is being added to the front or the top image here. And the banner, the wide banner image is seen on my desktop view. But if I were to switch this over onto my mobile, it's funny, it's almost so subtle that I almost miss it, right? But we're flipping the coffee cup and cropping in the right elements to make this more of a mobile-friendly view as well.
That's
Now,
fantastic.
it's worth, yeah, and my favorite thing about this is this is a simplified example, right, where I focus primarily on text. Dynamic content like this can also apply to image composition as well, right? So in my example right here, this is a newsletter I sent out to my team. I've got a record to say, like, add these to your best hits. And if I were to actually simulate this now, what I did for my use case, and this could easily be a use case where you want to include the appropriate product in the image or something like that. But for my use case right here, I wanted to make sure every single person in my team saw the right image so that they see themselves on the album art. And so I got my friend Jonathan, Kaitlin, who wasn't able to join us here today, but is here in spirit, right on the label, right? It's all easy and available to use. So armed with the dynamic media integration, we have a lot of new options available. And the fact that this is just all native and you can even apply the parameters right within Journey Optimizer makes this a really powerful integration.
Yeah, it allows. Go ahead, Jyothitha.
Sorry, just adding a couple of pointers on this dynamic media integration, because when we look at personalization at scale, there are two levels of personalization that we can visualize, right? One is uh, one-on-one personalization, where you might need to add in a profile attribute, change an image, just the way how Chris is explaining here, right? The image changes, the name changes based on each end user profile that you're trying to target. The second one could be more of a categorized level of personalization that you want to add. Say, for example, the banner that you're seeing here, it says morning BOGO coffee Fridays, right? Maybe for my first time buyers, I want to show this, but for my repeat buyers, I want to probably change my title to something, right? So you can easily add the same icon which Chris is now pointing out. You can add conditional content on that particular block, which in fact is allowing you to create multiple versions of the same dynamic media template or your hero image without creating redundant efforts, without creating duplicate assets, just so that you can cater to different archetypes within your targeted audience itself, right? So I think this is a very powerful um, hyper personalization use case, that with one single integration with dynamic media, you're able to do personalization at both these levels. One, even at a higher target audience level. Second, if you have archetypes within that audience. And third, on a one-on-one level as well, to hyper personalize any customer engagement that you're making with your end users.
And we just saw how Chris did that on the fly while you were talking. It's it's amazing. It just saves so much time, makes the whole
What's,
workflow a lot easier.
Yeah.
what's great here is obviously we're just talking about the text here, but you could have 5 different variants of the background image, right? And pick from those
Yeah,
as well.
fantastic. I'm wondering if our viewers had any more questions. As I said, don't be shy. Put your questions in the chat if you do have questions. Now's a good time. We can address them. So when we're thinking about, it's one of the questions that I have. Oh, wait, we got a customer question. Let's do this first, a viewer question. So does it work with AEM sites? That's the first question that Brian has, and the second one, would this replace Adobe Target?
So I apologize, Sandra. My headphones not behaving as much as I'd like. I heard something about AEM sites, but I missed the question.
Yes. So the question was, does it work with AEM sites? And Brian's second question was, would this replace Adobe Target?
Yeah, great
So
questions. Oh, go ahead, Jyothitha.
go ahead, Chris, if you want. I can add on top of you.
Okay, perfect. So it is worth noting that we've started at the beginning to say what it's native since day one of Journey Optimizer, which is the AEM assets integration, and then we focused on content fragments and dynamic media today because they are the newest integrations. But we also have an integration with AEM sites to where you can assemble a full email template there and then publish those templates right over into Journey Optimizer as well. That integration we built out a few years ago. So there's some collateral on that, but we can always follow up with that. So you can absolutely build within AEM sites and then publish your email template over for use top to bottom within Journey Optimizer as well. We'll pause that, Jyothitha, and then we can talk about Target as well,
Yeah,
if
I
you have any.
think same thing what Chris is mentioning. We do have an integration which the team had worked on. It's currently in a beta format, but you can reach out to us if you need to understand more about it. How does it work? What is the value? How can you get it enabled on your organization? We can help you with that. To answer your question, Brian, on would this replace Adobe Target, this integration necessarily is not positioning in the right way as we would do with Adobe Target, because Target is more focused on how we would relay the product recommendations and all of that. This is not just limited to that, the scope is much more bigger, because as you saw here, it's not just if you want to bring in your product recommendations, have it surface here, maybe fetch the price on a dynamic fashion, that can be done. But even if you want to cater to a hero banner image creation like this with dynamic media template, that also can be done on very easy or seamless integration, which comes very natively within these products, right? So I think that would be my answer to that. But Chris, for sure, if you want to add on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of synergies between Journey Optimizer, Target, and Experience Manager, right? Both Target and Journey Optimizer can benefit from content with an Experience Manager. And Journey Optimizer and Target both manage part of a user's journey or experience, right? When you look at these two tools playing together, and it's funny, I'm laughing, Sandra, because you might never be rid of me on these sessions because I do think how Target and Journey Optimizer complement each other might warrant its own conversation in the future. But
Yes.
at a high level, Target and Journey Optimizer both have the ability to operate in some of the same digital channels. The approach they take to manage that experience works off of a little bit of a different data set and also focuses on different use cases, right? In layman's terms, Target's great at doing whatever it can within the session of a website or mobile visit and optimizing that experience within the in-session context. Journey Optimizer can also play in those same spaces, but has access to the experience profile. So those two solutions can work together to help navigate and basically traverse the life cycle. As you know less about a customer and say they haven't authenticated yet, Target's going to be the absolute best tool in those channels to optimize that experience within the session. But if you have a more authenticated experience, or you're looking at a cross-channel solution, right, where you want to start to carry the conversation from the website to the email and so forth, Journey Optimizer has that unified profile to help facilitate that broader conversation. So they're complementary solutions. They can help with the holistic lifecycle, but powered through the shared content available through Experience Manager, you can make sure that all of the content, all of the copy and so forth is using the same approved assets throughout.
Perfect. We have a question from Riaz. Is it possible to implement dynamic media for images used in content fragments?
Well, that's a great
Yes.
question.
You can do that. So when you have a particular asset which you have published to dynamic media, it basically takes off a public URL. In your content fragment, if you're accessing that URL, you will be able to access that same content fragment field, which is your dynamic media image URL within the page. So I think the value with such an integration would be that any changes that you're making to the asset will be automatically fetched into the AGO content as well, which is coming for sure as part of your content fragments content itself. And I think Chris is already on top of it to show you how you can do that.
Is exactly right. Yeah, right here I was just using a very standard, like I was using the personalization parameters to pass somebody's name as a contextual parameter in the asset being used. But so what I'm doing right here is I'm basically saying, if Chris use Ivory and so on and so forth, but I could also access the content fragment selector right here to use approved assets within this dynamic media template. Or to Jyothitha's point, there's integration patterns for vice versa as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if there aren't any more questions, feel free. We're still taking questions, even if we continue with the roadmap, because we've been speaking about it and we have a couple of people who are very interested in hearing what's coming up. So Jyothitha, can you enlighten us, talk a bit about the roadmap? And yeah, I
Yeah.
think we can. I think we're done with the demo for now. We can jump back in, but let's continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Talking about the roadmap, we do have some very exciting features coming out in 2025 itself. With the direction that we have taken towards bringing AGO AEM native integrations in the form of content fragments with AEM sites or dynamic media, we do have some very key improvements or enhancements we want to build into this workflow or experience. The first one being supporting different selection of different variations of AEM content fragment Joe's workflow. And the second one is to also be able to pull in AM content fragments in a more dynamic fashion. So when I say dynamic fashion, this is something which we have seen, like how I think one of the very important use case we have seen customers taking hold of at the AM content fragment integration was also multilingual or localization use case, right? So there, to make this experience more seamless, we are also working on a feature where the URL paths can be figured out in a dynamic fashion, and the pulling of AM content fragments can also happen in a more automatic manner rather than the integration that we saw in the demo today. To talk about some other big ticket items which we are working on, as I already mentioned, we have a roadmap which we're working together for building this integration with AM managed services too. With on-premise, it is not currently scope for H2 2025, but for AMMS, we are do working together to bring in an experience where you'll be able to pull in the AM assets, content fragments, dynamic media, and all of that into AGO from your AM managed services instance. And the other one is, as we already spoke about, we do have an asset selector which has been integrated from day one with an AGO. We have the AM content fragment selector, which we introduced with this integration. We are going towards a more unified experience of pulling these assets within AGO as well, where all of the AM assets or content fragments or dynamic media assets will now be surfaced using a single selected experience that is going to bring a lot of value when you look at multiple ways, like, for example, searching an asset or doing a filtering to understand what is the status or what is the metadata for that particular AM construct that you're trying to pull in. All of that is going to now get holistically combined into one single experience, which we are calling as content advisor selector. That is something which we are working towards to bring in within the AGO's experience as well. So these are some of the exciting things which our team is currently working on. We do hope that this is going to be some really good additions to these integrations that we're working on. But looking forward to hearing the feedback from customers as well once we start off with the beta programs for them.
We have more questions. So Top Pretender would like you to please clarify if AEM Sites integration is already available, if it was done a few years ago, or if this is coming.
Yeah, that's a great question. Jyothitha, do you want me to Adona.
I think you should take it, Chris, because you've been working on it longer than me.
Yeah, no worries. So it's funny. It's available right now. It has been available for some time, and we're always looking for customers with an interest in it. Why you might not see as much documentation about it is it's technically flagged as a beta feature right now, but it has been available for over a year. So if you're interested, it's absolutely something that we can make sure is available to you within your instance.
Yeah, so reach out to your Adobe representative to get it activated in your instance.
Yeah.
And we have another question from Anuya. The question is if you could share the governance aspect of the integration.
Absolutely. So, when you look at the governance, initially itself, not sure if you had noticed in the selected experience itself, we have something where you have a repo selection. So, that is something which we had incorporated to help restrict users to access certain assets. Say, for example, customers have different BUs, they want to restrict the usage with certain repository of AEM. That is possible where you can access make the AGOs and AEM access in alignment to ensure that only certain repositories are available with certain users of AGO for selection. The second thing is also about when you look at the complete approval workflow for a particular asset being used in AGO from AEM itself, right? So for AEM content fragment 2, when you look at it, the way how we are exposing AEM content fragments for selection within the AGO's experience is that only when a particular content fragment is published, that is when you will be able to access this particular content within AGO. That means that only an approved and published content is being accessed within the AGO's workflow. So these are some of the governance checks that we have already placed in AGO.
And it's worth noting that, oh, sorry, didn't want to cut you off, Jyothitha, but she's primarily highlighting, and we'll circle back to that in just a minute, the out-of-the-box governance when you're just working with AEM and AJO. Of course, for anybody using Workfront as well, both these solutions integrate with Workfront, so it gives you an extended set of ways to implement this into your custom approval processes as well.
Okay, waiting for you, Thitha, to be able to breathe again. I think
So
you're
sorry.
muted.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Apologies for that. I have a really dry cough happening, which is my after effects of a flu, which I've got. But apologies on that. Yeah, I think as Chris mentioned as well, we do have some governance in the sense of how we want to restrict the users of AG users to access the content, what content, and even within the selected experience, we also do allow filtering where you can filter the assets or the content fragment based on the different statuses that is applied to that particular EM construct so that the marketer is well aware of what asset is being used and what is the current status of that particular asset as well.
Okay, we have another question from Top Pretender. If a content fragment is used in an email sent out to the customers and later the content fragment is updated in AEM, how does AJO or AEM or both track which version of the content fragment was used for audit?
Hmm?
So for audit purposes. So do we track
Yeah.
that?
Go ahead, Chris. You want to add first?
No, I was going to let you take a first pass at this one, but I'm happy to
Sure.
head in.
Yeah. First of all, when a real-time update is being made on an AEM content fragment, say for example, you have an AEM content fragment which is published that is being accessed in the AGO's workflow, and an email has sent out. It is an ongoing campaign, right? The moment you make a change to the AEM content fragment, and only once you republish that particular AEM content fragment, that is when that content gets percolated into AGO, right? Without the republish action happening, that content is not being percolated into AGO, given that we are considering the publishing process happens once an approval of the change that you made is also done. The second thing is about how do we track the AGO AEM, right? So right now we do have a plugin within AEM which will allow that if example, looking at a particular content fragment, you can access that you can access that particular element, which is explore references, which will show you where that particular AM content fragment is being used across campaigns, journeys, and all of that. Apart from that, we are also working on our in our H2 priorities to bring across a reporting or identification mechanism to track all the AGO AEM constructs like an AEM asset, an AEM content fragment, or an AEM dynamic media to understand where all that particular AEM asset is being used in AGO journeys and campaigns. So that's something the team is currently working on for the H2 2025 roadmap. But yeah, that is a current status. And Chris, if you want to add on top of it.
Yeah, I would add, in addition to the roadmap, right, which is obviously going to make this a little bit more seamless, even today, right, you have the timestamps of when each version was published, right, within AEM. And we also have the logs available within Journey Optimizer to timestamp when the actual communication was sent. So it's available today to make sure you can actually track which version was sent within each communication. We're just enhancing that with the H2 roadmap to make that a little bit more seamless and tight across the solution set as well.
Perfect. Oh, we have another question from Brian. Are there best practices for creating content fragments at scale between teams? Designers creating and uploading assets in AEM, writers drafting the copy, and campaign strategy teams putting it together.
That's a really good question, Brian. Even we understand looking at the complete ecosystem for content that we have today, where you can create, design your content, work with the content agencies or content creators using an application like AEM, and then you come to AGO with your campaign strategies, your orchestration plans, your marketing briefs, trying to put together these content to be used in campaigns, right? Across these, and even within AGO, we know that we do have content library within AGO where you can create AGO fragments, content templates, which can be accessed and put together in your messages as well. So having these content management at scale is something which we want to bring together with a more unified experiences and have some best practices established across that. Our teams are working together to publish some blogs around this. I know this call is not going to be enough to suggest through some best practices there, because it's a very wider portion of that we want to talk about through. But just to give a couple of cents here, based on the direction that we want to lead customers, is that if you have a dam like AEM where you're trying to bring together all the assets, centrally manage it, have an omni-channel experience stitched across channels using an application like AGO, yes, of course, that is where we would want you to lead to as well, where you have your content creation team, your a copywriters team working together in an application like AEM. You have your assets published, approved, and then made use for other teams like your marketing or marketing tech ops team to make use of that in their content strategies across channels that they want to establish, right? But if in the other aspect, if you're looking at using AGO in a more standalone perspective, you're not just limited there, because you still have experiences of creating or bringing in content from other places as well, and using that as fragments or templates across your journeys as well. So once we have these blogs published, we will be more than happy to share it across the customer base so that the best practices can be floated along, and it would make more sense for customers also to start using that way.
That was perfect. And I would just add to that, be mindful that we've only got a minute here. If you're looking for something a little bit more like tailored to your business, of course, reach out to your CSMs with Adobe, and odds are good, Jyothitha and myself or some others within the team will show up and help you talk about the strategies and the best practices applied to your business as well, and how you're creating assets today and how this might be repurposed across channels. So definitely reach out. We're always happy to have more tailored conversations one-to-one.
And we have one follow-up question. Can the content fragments be created based on insights? This image gets more opens, this text gets more clicks, forms, fills, etc. So basically data-driven.
Yeah, there's definitely there's two levels of this insight, right? There's first and foremost, right, within Journey Optimizer, we explore performance for each communication that goes out, and part of that is to dive into the performance of the individual assets, inclusive of fragments, being used within that template. And then obviously within AEM and content analytics, there's another set of insights that occur kind of cross-touch or cross-channel that I'll defer to Jyothitha to talk about.
Yeah, I think rightfully, as Chris mentioned, right, because it's a communication between two different platforms, and we're using the constructs of one particular platform like AEM within AGO. So some of it we do have, like for example, the AEM insights to understand which content fragment is doing good. We do have that existing today, but the complete reporting to understand this content fragment was used in so and so journey or a campaign, and this was the click-through rate or the open rate I had received for this particular channel using this particular asset or content fragment is something which we don't have existing today. But that is what, as I said earlier as well, it is one of the H2 2025 roadmaps which we are working on, because we understand this is going to be a key value for customers as well to get onboarded with this integration.
Okay, I'm afraid those are all the questions we can take for today. If you have any more questions, join us for the Ask Me Anything session on August 6th, which will be at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We will be on a chat, a live chat, answering questions for an hour. So take that opportunity to join us. You can also put your questions. The link to that chat will be posted to the landing page of this show. You will get that link via email after the show. And you can post your questions there as well, and we'll be happy to answer them. And yes, we're at time. Thank you so much, Jyothitha and Chris. This was an amazing session. I enjoyed it very much. I hope our viewers enjoyed it as well. To our viewers, thank you so much for the interaction, for your questions. And in the background, we have Chuck Middleton, my colleague who's been running the show. So thank you, Chuck, so much for making sure that the show is running seamlessly. And yes, I hope to see you all soon. I'm sure I'll have both of you on the show again. And thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.